So let's talk about video, and let's talk about how Hollywood succeeds in the digital distribution era. Before we get started, I just want to quickly thank our sponsors today. Our lead sponsors, Digital Smiths and Kite, and Ben Weinberger and Gannon Hall are here on the panel with us. I also want to just ask a couple of other people to just quickly raise their hands. From Akamai, we have Bill Wheaton. I think Bill is here in the back corner. And from ScanScout, Bill Day is here. Bill? Great, Bill Day is here. And from Signian, Tony Lapolito is here. Tony's here. So if you have any questions, want to learn more about those companies, please feel free to see them afterwards. So we're going to go for about 45 minutes here. I'm going to ask some questions to the panel. We'll try to keep it informal and hopefully interactive, hopefully interesting, so no one feels the need to rush out and get another cup of strong coffee. And then we have plenty of time, about a half hour or so, for Q&A at the end. We're going to have a couple of folks with handheld mics who will come up to you. I'll just ask you to introduce yourself quickly and then ask your question. So on that note, why don't we go ahead and get started? There's, I think, no shortage of stuff to talk about. Hollywood is right in the middle of this whole online video and mobile video revolution. So lots of stuff happening, and let's see if we can sort of unravel some of the issues today. So I'm going to maybe direct my first question toward Ted and Albert. One of the things that I've found interesting is that as we look at online video success today, premium programming, there's a little bit of a bifurcation. On the one hand, there's a lot of success in catalog-oriented programming, which is something that Netflix has really specialized in with its streaming. On the other hand, a lot of success with current TV programming, which is something that ABC has had a lot of success with. So let's start by just understanding what consumers like. And Ted, maybe you can lead us off by giving us a little bit better handle on what you're seeing in terms of your streaming activity, what you're hearing from your viewers is working for you.
Sure. So we have a unique advantage in that we've had a long head start on the digital era in how people behave with DVDs. So remember, we have this environment of 110,000 plus movies on DVD and how people behave and the value of personalization and all these different channels and different genres of content. And what we are focused on this digital side the same way we are on the disc side on the breadth of content that Hollywood has to offer, because the more personalized you are, the more you realize that people's tastes are incredibly diverse. So on the disc side of the business, we ship 45 to 50,000 different titles every single day. So being able to bring what the power of the internet brings to consumers is personalization and efficiency and choice, and the delivery is all great too. But only a couple years ago, it was the cheapest way to move bits into people's homes was putting a disc in the mail. And that's no longer the case. So we're evolving the business, and the most important part to us is what do people want to watch and how do they watch it, and what do they value and what don't they value. So the place that Netflix plays in the food chain for Hollywood and for the studios is not in the news, sports, American Idol business, not in the kind of short shelf life, perishable content, but everything else. So we are in the long shelf life content business. And the thing that we bring to the table is that personalization and efficiency and a consumer model that allows people to be adventurous and find new things and try new things. So that's why we have intentionally stayed out of the day after broadcast space, because that's where the network should be. The newer the content is, they should be, these content owners should be pursuing the most lucrative transaction models to get there. And then we come in. It doesn't make any sense for the subscription model to be the most, the most expensive place for people to go, or the first place people go. So that's why we are, what we do is we bring to life the TV shows that only made it a season sometimes, or the ones that made it for 12 seasons but are no longer on the air, or and we could be just behind a season, and the people who are really passionate about that show, and they got to show up on Thursday night. That's a great business for the networks, and they, and we don't interfere with that business. We're quite additive to it. So
great. Albert, is that kind of basically the way you guys look at it as well?
Yeah, there's room for both library and current programming. So for TV, at least by and large, the network sites are, for the most part, driven by consumers who want to catch up, because everyone's lives are pretty busy, and it's really tough to actually sit in front of a TV and make an appointment. It's hard for appointment television right now because of just people's schedules. So for the most part, people are using ABC.com, NBC.com, CBS.com. They're all for catch-up. So if I missed it in its original broadcast airing, I can easily catch up to it on my own time. And for the most part, most of our viewing happens within the first 3 to 7 days post-air. In fact, actually, about half of the viewing happens within the first 3 days after its original air. So people do want to be in the know of what's happening out there in pop culture. They just can't make it for that time, so they can find some other time they can squeeze their TV show in.
Great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, fundamentally, I think what you guys are both talking about is the idea of windows, right? And how content kind of gets released through those windows. And Justin, you guys are in the middle of figuring out windows and continually sort of adjusting them,
with help from others.
With help from others. So, tell us how you guys are looking at windows and how long they'll continue to remain as they are, or what adjustments we might be expecting coming up.
Well, yeah, I think as everybody knows, windows obviously are an extremely important part of the business model that allows us to produce the kind of content that we do. It's also it's an important sort of launch platform for for derivative, for our home video releases or game releases tied to our IP. So it's intrinsically important to us to continue to manage windows in a way that that allows us to continue to produce the content, offer the content at prices that whether it's through our distribution partners, directly, what have you, at prices that are a good value proposition for the consumer. But we're also obviously very mindful of the changing opportunities with digital platforms, over-the-top opportunities, which these guys have really shown a light on in a kind of brilliant way. There are no sort of stock answers, but I will say confidently that managing windows will continue to be and always will be an important part of what we do, and ultimately I think that it allows us to create the kind of content that we can and do and have historically done. I did want to mention briefly, based on your first question, to riff off this catalog concept. One of the things that we launched last year at Warner is a really deep catalog play that we call Warner Archive. What we did was we took titles that about 2/3 of our theatrical catalog has never been released on physical product because the business model hasn't supported it. We've started to release a subset of those titles on manufacturing on demand, which is a physical medium, obviously, but in my mind, it's really more about inventoryless content distribution. So whether it's physical, digital, I think it's a really interesting trend. So we launched it a little over a year ago at this point. We've got 600 titles in the market currently. We'll probably have somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 by the end of this year. We have never lost money on a single release that we've put out there, and from a revenue standpoint, we've completely outpaced our projections, and probably will quadruple our revenues from last year to this year. And I think it speaks to the idea that the consumer and the digital platforms now allow us to get to really that sort of micro-programming, micro-marketing model where we can deliver content to people who are highly engaged and in a very specific way with specific content at a price point that we just couldn't previously.
Now, with the archive example, why go physical there?
Well, we're doing both, actually. Okay. We're doing both physical and digital. There are a few reasons why physical has taken off in the early stages of the archive business, primarily because the target audience in the initial expression of this offer are hardcore. These are movies. The first set of movies that we've released are from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, hardcore collector market, and they skew more towards physical product at this point. But that's really the only reason, and we are distributing them both as a physical and digital product.
Okay, great. Let's bring Ben and Gannon into the conversation. You guys are obviously very involved with powering a lot of the digital video that's coming in. And Ben, when we talked last week, you talked about the value of discovery, actually the challenge of discovery, especially in a world where a lot of archived content is now being made available for choice by consumers. Tell us a little more about what you guys are doing and how it impacts the archive capabilities.
Sure. I think there's different things, especially when you're talking about physical versus digital as an example, because the person who's going there is looking for a different experience. They're wanting something now, obviously, in the digital world. And so just that alone is prompting what they're searching for, or how they're filtering their content. And at VideoSchmooze, we really focus around the metadata and kind of what's driving that personalization, kind of the breadth of how do you get what you want, however you want to get it. And I kind of couch that by not saying, not necessarily when you want it, because I think they do want it, people do want to get it when they want it, but they really want to be in the conversation and in the discussion of the content. So this notion of coming on all the comments previous, windowing is really important, and whether we're helping you find something that is maybe available for watch it now, sort of instant viewing, search, discovery, however we're getting you to that, that's one thing. But there may also be the need to combine that with behavioral data to say, here's what's popular, here's what people are watching, here's what's on now on linear. So how do you combine both the linear viewing experience and the on-demand viewing experience? And over time, if on-demand is this and going to be this, how do we make sure that it's not really this sort of random, chaotic, I really just get whatever I want when I want it. And so at VideoSchmooze, can we focus your audience and help you get to, this is what people are talking about, this is what's popular, this is how, if you're looking for an action adventure movie or a TV sitcom from the 60s, how do we just not deliver you sort of random results and get to more specific what you want, what other people want, so that you feel relevancy in yourself as a person. You're not just sort of off on an island watching something that you're not going to have anything to talk to anybody about.
Are there early examples of where this is starting to succeed?
I think that everybody up here has examples of that, that are some involved with VideoSchmooze, some not. And traditionally, we're focusing on major media companies and distributors and helping to personalize that distribution and consumption experience. We do work quite a bit with Warner Brothers and helping in some of those areas, as well as some of the other studios and distributors. But I think everybody up here is doing this in their own way, and certainly involving people into the conversation. And I think that's one of the most important parts as a viewer, that you don't really want to watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it. You want to watch what people are watching that make you feel relevant to the conversation, and then narrow down and get to what it is you want within that sort of subset. And everybody's doing that in various ways.
Okay. Again?
Yeah, it's interesting. We see the same issues, but are approaching it somewhat differently. The two kind of trends around digital that we're most focused on are the medium itself and how users engage with digital content. For the most part, it has become an extremely social endeavor. It's not necessarily about kind of watching passively broadcast content, but because of Twitter, because of Facebook, because of the interactive nature of the internet, it's become a very social kind of activity. And we look to leverage that to the degree that we can to take advantage of the technology as it exists today to allow media companies to do more interesting things with video. And part of that is around discoverability. So for instance, one of our clients, HomeAway.com, we powered their Super Bowl campaign at the recent Super Bowl. So they did a buy for the Super Bowl, and then they drove the audiences to a microsite where they could watch webisodic original content starring Chevy Chase around this HomeAway promotional campaign. And what we saw, because we integrated a lot of kind of social and interactive capabilities, that it saw about 1.5 million video views in 24 hours. But what was really remarkable about it is at least 1/3 of them were from the social web. So what happened was people went to the site, they watched a video, they were also able to submit their own videos, and then they shared those videos on Facebook, on Twitter, and that ended up driving a significant amount of traffic back to their owned and operated destination, which was a real kind of eye-opener for us in the power of social for discoverability. And then the second thing that we're really focused on is this issue of audience fragmentation, and how while users are continuing to move online in droves, they're also becoming increasingly fragmented in terms of where they're actually consuming content. Right now, mobile is actually the fastest growing segment of video consumption, according to Nielsen's latest 3-screen report. And Facebook alone is now 500,000 active users. So the question becomes, how do you reach those users and deliver a compelling video experience in a way that is relatively easy to do? And I think the challenge for a lot of media companies that we're trying to address is overcoming that complexity. Now you've got the iPad that only supports HTML5. You've got multiple Android devices with different form factors, different operating systems. It becomes very complex to deliver a video experience that actually reaches them. So we're focused on trying to alleviate that complexity.
Great. Okay, let me see if I can...
Well, before you don't mind, before you move off of Windows completely, I'll give you the one, the rub here, right, is the Windows system is incredibly important, and I agree with in terms of managing the profitability and the ability to keep investing $3 million an episode into television, on and on. But the rub here is what Albert mentioned. 50% of the viewing takes place in 72 hours, right? So when you look at these things and say the over-management of Windows also can be our demise. So
what do you mean by that?
I had talked with, I won't name names, but a high-ranking studio executive.
You can if you want. No one will share.
So we were talking about day-and-date distribution from theaters to either VOD or DVD. And the belief at the time was, and this was less than a year ago, is that if movies were available at home the same day they were in theaters, theaters would be empty. This was his exact words. And my point to him was, in what other industry would you know exactly what your customer wants and not give it to them and expect to succeed? Right? So that's why I think in here we have to understand that there's a different thing that happens on Tuesday night on American Idol on Fox than what happens when somebody's watching, Caddyshack or the last season of Weeds on Netflix. It's a very different behavior, and the things we're talking about, the interactivity and trying to bring the social web to viewing, it doesn't surprise me really that the social web drove so much of that viewing, because those are the kind of people who are engaged in that process. But you don't need to drag the social web into the process for the masses, because I don't think it's really necessarily a mainstream behavior. I mean,
well, Google TV could change that, and we'll see.
But watching is the ultimate passive act.
Right.
The strength of cable television, right, is the ability to surf. The term that man right there taught me was massive passives. Right? People sit on the couch and do this, and that's a big part of the advertising-driven, carriage fee-driven cable model. And that is middle America. That is the mainstream behavior.
But don't you think it will evolve beyond that? I mean, there's a $70 million advertising, in terms of broadcast. But it seems to me that a lot of that behavior and a lot of these practices, such as video on demand, only 24-hour, that you can watch the movie that you download, those types of practices seem to hinder the actual adoption of digital and are keeping those ad dollars from going online. So those of us who are involved in digital, it seems that it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy when you're still focused on content that is primarily made for television or theaters and putting that into a digital domain, but not really taking advantage of everything that digital has to offer to evolve that experience.
Well, I do believe, though, that you can do all that and compress the windows without having to eliminate them or lengthen them.
Right.
I mean, as much as the Warner Catalog Initiative has been successful, it's also, I imagine part of it was a bit of an underestimation of the demand for those movies, because the barrier to entry really wasn't 60-cent DVDs, right? It was the idea that it was getting all the inefficiencies of trying to get shelf space for them. So
marketing, shelf space.
So just listening to the consumer, giving them what they want. There has to be a fine line. I mean, Michael Linton got beat up for his comments about the internet when he said, from his perspective, nothing good has come of the internet. But the truth of it is, from his perspective, hardly anything has, right? So I mean, you look at it and say, the one thing he said that I think did make a lot of sense is, what I want when I want it cannot include smashing the windows and taking it, right? So, and that's literally and figuratively, I guess. But I think that by being able to manage it, by listening to the consumers and giving them a model, Netflix success has been about giving the consumer what they want and making it better and better and better, but recognizing that movie watching is a passive event, and movie choosing should be kind of a passive event too. So we have this strength of our personalization data that basically the things that come on the screen first are the 40 things I'm going to love the most. And I don't know how that happened, but it just happened. And that's the way I think people like to do it. I don't believe that people are sitting around watching a movie saying, wow, I wish I could change the ending, or wow, I wish I could text everybody I know about this right now. Some people just want to watch the movie.
Howard? So, yeah, I see Ted's point. I think when you look at windowing, there are two things that drive windowing. One is money and distribution, right? So it's like the preferred place to put your content is something that will give you the widest distribution and the most amount of money in the first initial exhibition for a piece of content. And then the second thing that drives it is market segmentation. What are the other windows that you're tackling to address a specific market need, whether it's someone who wants to own a DVD or someone who wants to watch it on an east out through basis. Anytime we want to collapse a window, let's say simulcast or put on-demand content on the same time as its premieres on broadcast, you need to make sure that you're monetizing that piece of content in the same way that you are in this initial window. So it kind of brings back to, I know, Will, you wrote this morning about number of ads per episode. So the way we look at it is, how much do we make per episode on broadcast, and how much do we make on an episode in other various online exploitations? And in DVR, we lose up to 60 to 70% of the ad revenue because of its ad skipping. The online piece is actually now going to exceed that of DVR, which is we are now selling more ads, which basically makes revenue higher than what you would make on a DVR. So now we want to push .com as much as we can. Get rid of your DVR. Just go to .com. It's all in the cloud. And it'll all sort of shorten and compress if you can figure out how to get your episode on parity with what you're getting on your primary distribution. So someday you'll see potentially on-demand content come exactly the same time or right after the broadcast. And that can only happen if you can get the economics at parity with what you're getting on broadcast. So we're getting there. We're inching our way there. But windows are created to basically maximize and target, go after a specific market that will give you the widest distribution, the most money at the first shot. And then after that, you exploit it in many other ways. So what you have to do is you have to look at how much am I making here versus here versus here, and you're going to have to shuffle the deck, basically. You're going to start seeing windows sort of being moved around based on where distribution is starting to flow. And until people actually get off broadcast, broadcast is here to stay. With all the distribution stuff that we're doing, TV has never been higher. More and more people are watching TV, partly because we've opened up the gates to allow people to experience more content through digital. So
When you say more people watching TV, more people watching in total or on air in particular?
More people watching TV, on TV.
On TV.
Linear
Yeah,
TV
if you look at the latest
4.5 hours per day.
The Nielsen three-screen report just said there's more people watching TV,
Yeah.
more people watching online, more people watching mobile. So there's no cannibalization.
What I don't get, though, and I'm sure most people in the audience have looked at these numbers also have maybe scratched their heads about, is how is it that people keep watching more TV when the hours of use in all other platforms keeps going up as well? What does your research say about how that's possible? Is it multitasking?
Well, people are, I think
less
there's-
sleep?
Maybe that could be it.
They're doing it at work. They're doing it on their mobile
Less
phones
productivity,
when they're
okay.
waiting for the subway. These other screens serve different purposes depending upon what you're doing. And that's one of the things that comes back to content. When you're talking about content to mobile, one of the big mistakes that media companies make is delivering the same content that you would to a PC or to a television to mobile and expect the experience to be good. If you're consuming content on mobile, you're most likely in transit. You're waiting for something. It's just going to be a short form type of thing. So I think it has to do with the context of how people are consuming media is adding to the amount.
What's surprising is that you would assume that with digital, people are being more efficient in their TV viewing, and they are. They're very efficient. They can watch more of the TV they want to watch in less time, but now they're watching more TV. Right. So what you're finding in the consumer research is that people are more deliberate about what they're watching. They're saturating their time with stuff they really want to watch, as opposed to settling for what's on at that point in time. So you're finding people are being very deliberate about, I'm going to watch Lost live, I'm going to watch Castle on a DVR. People are choosing more carefully about what they're consuming.
Well, the top 10 most watched television events of all time are all live events, or the last episode of a show, but all very much, driven by, I got to be there at this time, broadcasting, and that's continuing today.
Yeah, I mean, for Lost, for example, this entire season, it's like we had lower usage on Lost in the first episode and lower usage on the finale. I mean, sort of when you look at the curves, because all our fans who typically might be using abc.com to catch up, they showed up on the live season finale. They didn't need to use the .com because.
But presumably they'll come back and watch over and over again on the website as well.
What you find is the people who are using abc.com is a super fan, the people who want to make sure that they're catching up with their show. And when it premieres, you want to be there for the first time it airs, so you don't get that much viewing. And then as the season goes on, their lives get really busy. It's like, I can watch it a little later. And then with this series finale, I got to be there when everybody's watching it live. I don't want to be late. And so you actually do see a little bit of a dip. But we still had high numbers for Lost online, but you can definitely see the trends of how people are using the platform.
One of the things that plays into all this also is I think it was a week or two ago, there was the article about CWTV has potentially hit video nirvana, I think is what it said. And it was talking
I didn't
about,
write that, so I don't know what it is.
Sorry, yeah, I'm looking at you, but it was, I can't remember if it was in the Journal or Times, but they were talking about a lot of the very similar things that you wrote about today around number of ads that they've been able to do, and that viewing has continued to go up and not down. And kind of what Gannon said, one of the things they pointed to is that their audience skews heavily towards younger female demographic as compared to most of the other broadcast content that's available. And that demographic is extremely savvy with the devices. And they're saying whether it's the mobile device, their iPad, their laptop, they're consuming inordinate amounts compared to sort of the peer set of content in a mobile environment or in a connected environment, and less so concerned about sort of the live day and date. Although the numbers are very high continually, and Nielsen is tracking well on all of those, they're just finding that this video nirvana concept was, we have more people watching in a connected environment, we're able to show more ads, viewings going up, and the dollars and the rates and the sellout percentages are incredible. And so I don't know if that's going to be the model to come, and if that's sort of ubiquitous as more and more people get more adept with the devices, but it's their audience in particular, they were citing, because of who they are, because of the age that they are, is pushing that trend faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We're also talking one point. We're also talking about kind of making a distinction between broadcast and online, and I think we're likely to see this go is more and more content as it's being delivered through IP-based technology, whether you call that connected devices or connected televisions. There will be eventually a blurring between what is broadcast and what is online delivered, especially if devices like Google TV and some of these other emerging platforms are successful. What advertisers will finally be able to do is do ad buys which are broadcast but have a lot of the advantages of digital through behavioral targeting and so forth and so on. So I think we're talking about it in the context of these two things as separate, but as we saw in the mobile and online space, now mobile and online are starting to converge because of the devices. You've got these kind of mixed devices like the iPad, and you've got agencies that are doing buys across mobile and online. As IP technology moves into the living room, it's likely I can see that happening as well, where buys are really based around not is it broadcast or is it online. It's all going to be delivered via IP-based technology eventually.
So let's pick up that thought and talk a little bit about one of my favorite topics, which is the importance of the cable industry to the Hollywood ecosystem. So, some estimates say there's $25 billion or so per year in affiliate fees, program fees that distributors pay to the cable TV networks, who in turn obviously turn around and fund a lot of Hollywood production. So those affiliate fees, which are paid by all of us consumers, are very important to the Hollywood ecosystem. Some people believe that cord cutting, the idea of throwing out your cable subscription, is just ready to happen. There's a huge groundswell of interest in doing that, and it's going to happen sometime soon. Other people, like me, don't see it happening quite as fast, primarily because cable networks are not eager to see that happen. They want to see stuff stay behind the paywall, if you will. So, Ted, let me start with you because there's probably no other company out there that is more identified with the idea of fueling cord cutting than is Netflix.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how you guys see cord cutting, what role Netflix might be playing or might not be playing.
Well, following on to what my earlier comments about how different the service is from television, in that the one thing we're not is live. And the attributes of our service are much more about one-to-one delivery efficiencies, not one-to-many delivery efficiencies. So personalization doesn't help the Super Bowl at all. You don't need any. But everything else, like I said, it helps dramatically. Mm-hmm. So the reason why this is an interesting challenge for us is every single thing that you can stream on Netflix today represents a reinvention of some window or some model or another. These are not simple deals because of what you just said. The fear is, around cord cutting isn't that pay TV is going to lose subscribers. It's going to be that the whole ecosystem that supports pay TV is going to start to crumble.
Yeah.
And that the demand for unbundling,
yeah.
right, which is going to be the demise of cable, and on and on and on. And the way I look at it is several things. One is the one thing that Netflix, as much as we are accused of driving cord cutting, this is a kind of a phantom event, right? No one's ever seen any cord cutting happening. It could be the jetpack of the future, which is everyone wants one, but you can't really do it. And there's no technical reason you can't have a jetpack.
Yeah. I heard Kaiser Soze cut the cord also.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, but I was looking at it this way: is that what we focus on is having a really, really super efficient and inexpensive product that doesn't disrupt cable and wouldn't drive cord cutting because it's so cheap. And the rub is that most studios complain that our price is too cheap. So, but really what it is that's what kind of keeps the ecosystem in place in some ways. You don't have to cancel anything to add your $9 Netflix subscription. So that's one way that it's, that it's the opposite of driving cord cutting. The other is that, and I don't know if it's 2 years or 20, but I do know that e-commerce and the internet feeds on inefficiencies. It's fueled by inefficiencies in other markets. So if you think about maybe the least efficient transaction that a lot of Americans used to have to do is you have to go to a mall to book an airline ticket, right? So the mall travel agent is gone because the internet can do that much more efficiently.
The video rental store is
The
gone.
video rental store is heading that way for sure. And if you look at all these, and in fact most media delivery models are riddled with inefficiencies. And the idea that the internet can bring bring efficiencies to that system is very promising for Hollywood, not threatening to Hollywood. And whether that involves a change in the way consumers buy content, I'm not sure. But what I know for sure is that cable is built on this system that is highly dependent on people paying an unlimited amount for cable. And the cost of Netflix is actually cheaper than the average increase in the cable bill over the last 5 years. Right? So this is the way that way I see this is that I think that the internet will absolutely turn that delivery model on its heels. And not about Netflix or Comcast. It's just the internet will find all the inefficiencies in content delivery and fix them over time. I'm pretty positive that will go in that direction.
But so to dig in further, what catalyzes that? In other words, if you're a cable TV network executive right now, and you're getting a monthly affiliate fee from Comcast, Cablevision, Time Warner Cable, et cetera, what is going to start changing your mind such that you're not wedded to that model? Because that model, as I said before, is extremely important to Hollywood.
Well, and the good news for cable is that these Netflix and other over-the-top video services are a killer app for broadband. But you really don't need faster internet at home for email, but you do for video services to your television. And to the extent that these services are exceptional and people want them and can deliver kind of over-the-top niche subscriptions like MLB.com, NBA.com just launched. The World Cup is having an amazing success with all these businesses. And to the extent that those are successful and are really what consumers want, selling broadband is a lot more profitable than selling video for cable. So to the extent that people buy fewer video products but buy bigger data packages, that's absolutely a win for cable. And it's a win for the studios because the efficiencies that each one of those niche subscriptions bring, they can pay disproportionately high values for. Because they're serving a smaller, more passionate subscriber base.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a win for cable operators, the broadband ISPs themselves. I think the point that you're making. It's less clear to me that the networks themselves, who again rely on the $25 billion plus the ads that they get how, if or how they would transition. Justin, maybe let me kind of ask you to weigh in here. How, if at all, does a cable network, which today is reliant on affiliate fees, transition to this kind of open internet model, if at all? And maybe they're not. I see just
yeah. I mean, we're not no. We're not primarily in that, or certainly in the Warner side in the network business. So I'm not sure if I'm best positioned. But
cable channels too, right?
What's that?
You would extend that to cable channels as well, right?
Yeah, I'm saying for cable
not just
channels
broadcast networks.
Yeah, I mean
right.
studios are providing cable content. So.
But from a from a content standpoint, I do think that we're seeing a difference in behavior. We're seeing a deep catalog play emerging through these over-the-top services. We're seeing continued attraction on kind of first release, first-time viewing through cable and through their VOD offers. Those things have been hugely successful for us over the past few years with a significant growth curve. So far, I think both platforms are growing nicely for us in different parts of the catalog and different parts of the business, that's we're continuing to try and drive both sides.
Right.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
On the cable side, I think we have to kind of look at the end of the day, what kind of value is cable providing to the end consumer with all the programming they're buying? And it's a lot of value. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the hard part about it is that the consumer doesn't get how the business model works. They're paying their cable bill going, oh my God, this is a lot of programming. But when you look at what they would pay if we were all disaggregated, I mean, ESPN would be like $60 to $100 a month, right? So I don't think people realize that when you start to go in a way of disaggregating this content, it's actually good for the consumer. It's actually worse for the consumer.
But don't you think regional sports programming is an example, though, that if ESPN was $40 or $60 a month, I just wouldn't buy it. But 4 guys on my block would.
Right, but there's also, you have to look at segmentation. There are super fans that might,
yeah. But
there are people like the casual fan like myself who, I want to have ESPN for whatever I'm paying with my cable bill. I would never watch ESPN if it was $60 a month. It's like insane, right? So I don't think you'd lose a lot of viewers. And I think, the cable ecosystem, the programming ecosystem is basically a joint pool that's being invested to drive sort of broad distribution. That's the way you get mass distribution. And to your question, how do you migrate to this digital world? I think,
if at all.
I think it's possible, but I think what you need to do is to figure out how do you work with the existing players to create that value. And so yes, TV Everywhere is one of those things that have been thrown out there. I think between cable operators and cable programmers, we have to be really, really innovative to really figure out how to get there. And the struggle is, and part of the reason at least what we're trying to do on our side on the digital is to push the envelope and say, here's what consumer experiences should be on the internet in order to engage viewers online. And historically, cable operators have not been great at marketing nor creating great consumer experiences. If anyone's played with VOD, it takes forever to get through that screen. So there has to be some meeting of the minds of, if the cable ecosystem is to survive, then the cable operator on the technology and product end must adapt and adopt and embrace internet type of technologies and going fast in terms of, like a good example is Comcast. They did a great job with that iPad app. I mean, it's a start. I wouldn't say it's like the best thing in the world, but certainly made makes your EPG a lot easier to use as opposed to, click, click, click. It takes forever to get through that. So I think they have to be a lot more aggressive and expanding those, and we have to work together to figure out how to expand those rights. And we always wind up in the argument over, well, how much are those rights worth? But that's part of life. But we have to get there. And I think most of the stuff that we put online is very limited on the cable side. So for Disney Channel and ABC Family and SoapNet, we put only enough to help drive the franchise, but not enough to feel that you have to cut the cord.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say the only thing I would add to that is that the idea that there's going to be a lot of new buyers, right? So you were talking about what is how do studios benefit from over the top? There'll be a lot of new buyers, and that has never been bad for Hollywood. A lot of new buyers for the same content.
Which new buyers you think of?
Well,
Besides Netflix,
us as an
obviously.
example. They'll continue to be others. Do you think we're going to continue to run at this pace alone?
It's a question I often wonder about.
There's sort of
I'm sorry, Gannon is
the reason,
dying.
this is a topic that's
He's been falling off his chair.
really interesting to me. I mean, I think one of the issues, for one, I don't think the cable line is going to be cut anytime soon, and part of that reason is, something that Steve Jobs mentioned at the D8 conference when he was asked about Apple TV, like, why is that a hobby? Why aren't you investing more in that? And he said something which was, very interesting, which is that for Apple, and frankly for other kind of set-top box, TiVo, Roku, Boxy, there's no viable path to market because of the fact that the cable box is subsidized by the cable industry, and the overall experience is something consumers are pretty comfortable with. They get a cable box, it has DVR functionality, it's good enough, they can watch the programming they want to watch. Then on top of that, you have the whole ecosystem that we're talking about, a firmly entrenched business model. So the only way that this is going to happen is not necessarily replacing cable with Boxy or replacing cable with Apple TV, but for the cable experience to evolve and add another layer of internet-based interactivity and delivery and all of those aspects within that experience that consumers have. And it should be a single experience. It should be the TV experience, not I'm watching cable, now I'm switching over to Apple TV. It should be I'm watching television, this is delivered through my television, not a separate set-top box, and it's totally internet-powered connected. And I think Google TV is poised to solve this problem. One, they have a partnership with Sony. Sony's going to be releasing televisions with this built in the television. That means that consumers don't have to buy a separate set-top box. They have a reason to buy this. It's a brand new TV. Secondly, the timing is perfect given that Google's powerful enough, they have the content relationships, and they have the advertising infrastructure and the relationships with advertisers to create a huge new market to tap into not only the $70 million of broadcast ad dollars, but everything else they've been doing in terms of online. So I think Google TV potentially could just evolve this experience, but not replace it.
Okay.
Kind of building on the Google TV, maybe I think there's two things that we keep hearing about. Personalization is sort of the overall theme, but it breaks into the input device. And Google TV has talked a lot about this by using your Droid, and Comcast is the one who sort of pushed the envelope initially with the iPad, albeit it's a little awkward to use this huge thing as a remote.
$400 remote.
The $400 remote, yeah. And
You getting it for $400?
That's cheap.
Is there a sale going on?
yeah, I want one too. But that input device is driving that experience. And when you can do that, you really start being able to do things that are more personalized, a better VOD, a better browsing, whether it's linear or on demand, it doesn't matter sort of at that point. You can find it, assuming that the device. But that is really driven by the cable companies or overall cable satellite MSO saying, what are we as a company? Are we sort of in the airline, maybe jetpack paradigm? Are we in the business of flying people in planes? Are we in the business of transporting as fast as we can, whether that's by jetpack or teleporting? Who knows? So in the cable business, are we in the business of aggregating and delivering over a coaxial signal, sort of what you know as cable today? Are we in the business of delivering the best possible user experience to get the content you want, sort of in the personalized way that you want it? And I would generally say that's not how cable thinks today. So they'd have to evolve their thinking and say, we aren't coaxial closed network. We are user experience, content delivery. We embrace Netflix. We figure out how these things make a cohesive experience for the user. And overseas, they've actually done that pretty well to some extent. And if you ever go, watch B-Sky B or something like that, totally different experience than what you think of today as Comcast, Time Warner, et cetera. We're way behind.
In what way?
In the interactivity, the device, the input device, the personalization. When it comes to sports, you might get, not that I watch cricket, but some guys are office
You can admit it if you do.
Yeah, I'll admit it. 6 different angles of cricket. I have no idea why you need 6 angles of cricket, but you pick and you choose, and you can change them, and you can do things on the fly with sports. The VOD experience is like a lot of what you see on Netflix today or on ABC.com or what Google TV talks about. It's easy to navigate, and they're figuring that out, and the broadband speeds, to your point, support it. And what's happening there is just not happening here yet. And I think they need to come to grips with what they want to be.
One of the things that's, I think, really been fascinating is how sports has been kind of on the leading edge of converging the two experiences. We've got World Cup going on right now. We had Sunday Night Football. We had the Olympics. We have MLB. I guess I'm wondering what lessons Hollywood might learn, entertainment programming, might learn from what succeeded in sports so far. Anybody want to take that one?
More profitable to be a sports
Profitable being in sports? Okay.
Well, I think, the fans are rabid, and I think we're seeing some interesting use of video technology by our customers. ESPN International is one of our customers, and they're doing a lot around the World Cup. But one of the things that they're doing that I thought was particularly interesting and unexpected is hyper-local content using mobile devices. So they're using our mobile clients to create kind of very authentic, impromptu, raw content in New York City and all these various metropolitan areas, and posting it to their local ESPN sites around the kind of excitement around the World Cup. So I think that's something that we've seen that's been unexpected, which is using the more bleeding edge technologies that are available to really expand what it means to cover sports. It's not just about here's your high definition signal of the game, or even here's your high definition signal of the game with multiple camera angles, but here's the game, plus here's a way that fans can actually interact, create their own content, and here's how you can participate in this global event that we're all kind of focused on right now, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think sports has that trifecta of entertainment value, data, and social. Right? It's all three of it, and it's always been the driver for new platforms. If you want to drive satellite service, buy a team and put it exclusively on satellite or something. But I think it's historically has always been a huge driver of new technology, of new platforms. Certainly, the business models have supported it. So I think ESPN, great business model, and it helps invest in all the technologies and entertainment experiences to help their partners drive the platform even further. So ESPN3, which just did a deal with Microsoft Xbox, also a good model in terms of a broadband product of how we're selling that, and all of those dollars that come in get reinvested back into the product, and combining all these great experiences, that's what helps drive the platform. So
I would say sports adds a fourth thing, which is this gives people something to believe in, and it's the intangible thing and the soft thing, but it's the rabid fan base, and when you get a show like Lost, as your example, you create that sports-like mentality. People want to be relevant and be in that, and support it, and they live it, and it gives them something to believe in and sort of congregate around. So then you add this rich experience in data and strong business models, and it's hard to lose. Yeah. So if Hollywood can emulate that model somehow of belonging to something.
Yeah, and the best part about sports is that you know when to expect it. It's like when the NFL draft is coming, when NFL's coming, when hockey, basketball, World Cup, when all these things happen. You can plan against it, and there's a great roadmap to help drive those things. Lost, we always hope we have another one of those coming around, but it's really hard to bank on those big top hit shows.
It's kind of aggregating all the micro versions of the sports fanatics, right? Because there's just a million of them, but for hundreds of shows. Yeah.
One of the things that's also interesting about sports, kind of apropos ESPN, is that a lot of the big sporting activities online have moved to free ad-supported models, right? I mean, March Madness, the Olympics, et cetera. I wonder, what implication might that have for, a sports network like an ESPN or Fox Sports or others? Does it give them more confidence that some of this can be done on more of a pure ad-supported basis?
Well, I'm not probably the best person to speak on behalf of ESPN, but I think from a company viewpoint, I think dual revenue stream is still the best way to support the economics of sports. We are already, ABC Sports used to be around, but now it's ESPN on ABC for a reason, because it is the only place that we can even think about paying the rights packages at the high cost they are and be able to support and deliver programming. It's a constant struggle we have of, yes, we want to make sure that we can broadcast some of the biggest events on ABC, but the fact is that those rights costs are expensive, and to me, dual revenue stream is the only way that we're going to be able to continue down that path.
Yeah, okay. Let's do one more topic and then we'll open it up for audience Q&A. It's no secret that DVD sales have been declining dramatically, and yet I think there's still an interest on the part of consumers to own, to be collectors, to own, et cetera, and yet there are a lot of challenges in terms of creating that model. Justin, maybe you could kind of help us explain what the industry needs to be doing, what it is doing, what it needs to be doing in order to find the digital version of the DVD sale model.
Yeah, so
Small question.
Yeah, exactly. From a value proposition standpoint, my personal feeling is that electronic sell-through still suffers in comparison to buying the physical product. The ease with which you can transport the content around, play it in a variety of devices, is not matched currently with the myriad of formats and devices and ecosystems that the consumer has to navigate through currently. So I think that interoperability, I think that is of paramount importance. And obviously, there's huge technical challenges to that. The existence or the coming into the fore of a digital locker to really allow for the consumer to have a level of confidence that the content that they own will be accessible in the future. There's some kind of more innate emotional connection to actually owning something than exists currently. Local storage, has gotten cheaper, but I still think that is, there's certain segments of the audience that will add drives and kind of go that route. But I think more broadly, we need to focus on enabling that idea of a collection, that idea of a locker, that idea that they can get back to that content when they want it, that they can get it in as broad set of devices and touch points as possible is really a precondition for driving that. I think we're going to get there. There are obviously issues and challenges in terms of our historical business models, and that that's been referred to previously. I think collectively we're all kind of working on trying to evolve all of our thinking about how to offer the best experience at different windows and in different against different business models. Yeah. I think once we begin to solve that, I think that the idea of the digital collection will start to cement, and I think it will even continue to drive some of the content discovery areas that have been touched on in the way that Pandora or Last.fm or iTunes even came into the fore as consumers moved from physical music collections to digital music collections. I think that opportunity will happen in the electronic sell-through space.
If you had to say scale of 1 to 10 on digital collections, electronic sell-through, 1 being the industry is absolutely nowhere, and 10 is we have completely replicated the DVD model, if you will, digitally. Where would you say kind of we are right now, and what do you, any guess on sort of the time frame to reaching the 10 on the scale?
I will challenge you. Just kidding.
Oh, so where on the scale? I don't know. I would say that we're definitely on the lower end of the scale.
Lower end, okay.
We're kind of in the 3 range,
Okay.
3 to 4 range. That's my personal feeling from a consumer value prop perspective. From a time frame, it's hard to say. I think that there are signs that some of those preconditions that I talked about previously are closer to becoming a reality or starting to be a reality within the next 12 months. But just in its initial form. I think this is going to be evolutionary. I don't like to throw out timelines because you never win with that. But
Okay.
but I think that there are a lot of people who are focused on on the issues that are challenging that model.
Yeah.
And I'm encouraged with with the level of focus and discussion, and at least incremental movement towards solving some of those problems.
I think 3 or 4 is pretty generous, but believe me, I wish it was not the case, because I think.
Are you going to go to negative numbers?
I might. In this case, I would only point out that the reason we really drove the 28-day delay on the disc release for Netflix was in effect to try to make these things happen, like to try to make the desirability to own either digitally or in packaged media higher, because digital ownership, either in package or digital, drives the economics of movie making. Yeah. And it's one of these things that's obviously why people stay up late at night thinking about this. Mm-hmm. But the truth of it is, electronic sell-through is the most expensive, least portable, least understood. I could add on and on and on way to watch a movie possible. Yeah. And to add to the complexity, if you happen to have an HBO deal, and you buy a movie on Amazon and you put it in the digital locker, you can't watch it, even if you own it, because HBO controls point-to-point distribution during their window. Mm-hmm. So you buy Shrek, or one of the movies that go through HBO, and on Amazon you put it in the locker. You literally, once it comes to HBO, you no longer have access to it.
Right.
And how do you explain that to a consumer? And so when I look at that and go, so all those deals have to be redone. Okay, well these are 8-year deals, 6-year deals, so I'm sure it's not that it can't be undone, but it's going to come at a big price, and electronic sell-through is not really delivering the P&L to offset what that price might be. So I think it's incredibly challenged.
Certainly not at the current value prop.
Not currently. And I look at it today and I say, it's feasible that there's a generational shift away from ownership. When my kids buy songs to put on their iPad, they don't think they bought them.
Absolutely. The reason why people collect, we have to think about, why did people collect DVDs to begin with? It was so that you could watch the movies you liked when you wanted to, right? But now we're clearly moving to a cloud-based delivery. It's not 100% today, but Netflix is doing it, and Apple's most certainly going to be releasing iTunes in the cloud with 1080p video delivery to your living room, to your mobile device. There's no question that that's coming. And the younger generations are not thinking about digital media in terms of, here's my collection of, that's a very antiquated way to think of it, in the same way that people collected albums and CDs. It really isn't relevant to tomorrow's market. The challenge, though, is that there's so many business models that are entrenched in the old way around Hollywood, that the problem is it could end up being like the music industry, which is not evolving fast enough within a digital domain to reinvent these models before consumers say, you know what, I'm just going to download it illegally and watch it.
You remember the early days of the show Cribs on MTV? The first thing you'd see in their home would be their DVD collection. Right. It very much defined who they were. Right. So to me, it was a big social thing, but had very little to do, I think, with being able to watch it whenever you wanted, because 1 in 4 DVDs that get sold never got opened. So, but now, now I don't think any of these guys are showing their DVD collections in their homes anymore. So this is this evolutionary change.
It's the same thing with the Kindle too. I talk to people, and the main reason they don't want a Kindle is they have a great library of hardback books that show people how smart they are.
I can read.
So how do you show people all the great books you've read on a Kindle? Hey, look at what I'm reading right now. It's the new whatever. So, but that thinking is just simply going to go away, because that's how things evolve with technology.
There's a study that just came out from one of the research groups where they said the 70% of DVD consumption from both a buying and then subsequent watching is parents, and specifically moms. And it's Shrek and whatever, and they're buying it and they're watching it 50 times. And then the other interesting part that they said that has gone down is sort of the Cribs stuff. I have this huge collection, but the biggest trend that was happening was the younger folks saying, I don't even own a DVD. Like, I've never bought one ever. I own everything digitally, but they get it. They understand sort of portability and how I put my iPad on or whatever it might be and move things around. Whereas the parents with the kids don't get it, and that's complicated. And in some ways, there isn't even a way to do it. And they just want to put in the DVD and satisfy the kids.
DVD set a very high bar. I think that's something we can all certainly agree on. Okay, we have 2 mics in the back. I suspect that we have a few questions in the audience, so let's go ahead and open it up. obviously the price paid is a process of negotiation, but
For the market, it's a process of the market.
yeah, the market. But from Netflix's standpoint, what are your inputs? In other words, how are you kind of trying to size up what you think the economic value of a title is?
The same way we used to, and continue to try to figure out demand on a DVD, to how many copies we're going to need, and how to structure those deals. We're doing the same. We're using a lot of those same models to forecast viewing hours and % of total viewing, and allocate streaming dollars that way.
So this analysis of past behavior, title by title, segmenting by category.
Yeah, and then regression models against that.
Okay.
And so our ability to pay a tremendous amount for movies that people are going to watch a lot of, and don't license at all things that we don't think people are going to watch much of.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Question.
Yeah, I'm a former development executive and a distribution executive, so I'm curious, when you license your movies, and like you talked about your, deep catalog, and then you talked about what you're doing now. In both cases, are you able as Netflix to license the same movies that Warner's got in your catalog, and maybe Netflix, you have them on a non-exclusive basis? Are you guys working together on that basis?
So we have one business model, right? We're just in the subscription content business. So we have to get those rights as they evolve digitally, the same way I had to get the disc model. So when I look at those today, how do we get there? The one way I think we've been successful so far has been to be nimble, which is, look, most of my deals are non-exclusive. In fact, 99% of my deals are non-exclusive. So they say, if you find a better deal, take it. A lot of times when we do these deals, I give very easy outs to our suppliers and say, if this doesn't work out for you, if this is really disrupting what would otherwise be a 10-time sale, take it. Because we don't have that much demand concentration on any individual piece of content, so that so we could be nimble in that way. As more and more people come into the market and we get closer and closer to parity with, if I'm paying the same amount that HBO or Showtime is paying for a movie, I'm going to probably want those same exclusive rights as well, just because I paid for them. But in the meantime, if they're willing not to and willing to embrace the idea that there'll be multiple buyers and 1 and 2 can equal 4, then we can, I think we can continue doing business that way. But I think it will evolve mostly for competitive reasons. Will people actually try to keep content away from Netflix by paying higher and higher fees to keep it exclusive, at the same time that we're trying to pay moderate fees but keep it non-exclusive? So.
On the Warner Archive example, we launched the product line directly using a direct channel to sell the product, but as soon as we saw traction, we opened it up broadly. 60% of the revenues for that program come through third parties, and that's really where all the growth is.
Question on this side of the room? Yes, here in the middle.
Hi, Matt Thomas from Signiant. You guys were talking about digital vaults, and I'm wondering if you are all in agreement that cross-platform, cross-device digital vaults like DEC or KeyChest are the way that the industry is going.
Justin, you want to take it?
Yeah, yes. We're supporting it on a number of fronts. We think it's a precondition to drive sell-through, to allow for the extension of that collection concept that has had such strength. I think there are digital analogs to the physical collection construct. I think there's an emotional component. There's a component about your content that you forget about whether you own it, whether you viewed it. The idea that a collection of content represents your entertainment choices, and then by extension something about who you are, I think is extremely important. And we're moving forward through DECE and other initiatives to enable that interoperability.
I think it'll be interesting to see what Apple and Steve Jobs sort of ultimately have to say about all of this, because they're, as we all know, not playing with sort of systems other than their own. So when it's in iTunes, if you guys are hopefully almost all iTunes users, either for music or video or both, you can't take it anywhere but there. So if you're willing to create your world around Apple, that's one thing. But if you're not, or for some reason you can't, then you're not going to get that same stuff. And so there may be a sort of multiple factions within the
This isn't
vault.
just video, though. This is a problem across all digital media. I mean, the fact that you subscribe to the New York Times on the Kindle, but you have to get another subscription to get it on another device or to get it online is a broken. I mean, you need just media everywhere. a multi-platform authentication system for either storing it or just viewing it. If you own the content, if that ownership model is in place or that subscription model is in place. The thing I like about the Netflix model, though, is that it is, when I started using Netflix, that's when I stopped collecting DVDs because sorry, but that's the reality. Although, and the problem I have with your strategy around not getting newer releases as a consumer is I really want to get new releases from Netflix, and I would pay a premium for them. I would pay a premium to be able to stream a new release just as I went on the DVD. But what it did was enable me to stop thinking about content in the realm of collections, but all of Netflix is my collection. I can see anything in your catalog whenever I want, and I think that's the big shift in thinking. Now, in terms of the social interactivity around it, another great thing about Netflix is I watch a movie, I can rate it, and because of their Facebook Connect, all my friends can see that I liked a particular movie, which is way more valuable than a DVD being hidden in a bookshelf in terms of actually expressing who I am and what my tastes are.
Ted, don't forget to give Gannon his commission after the
Yes. I think I said the wrong thing, though.
Question here, Tom.
Hi, my name is Tom Morgan. This is a question for Albert. You recently, as Will just mentioned, wrote about this morning, doubled the ad load of ABC on the iPad. And instead of getting into the C3 debate, like several networks are now talking about, for post-broadcast, the first 72 hours going to a full Nielsen C3 load. Do you believe you're going to have ad uniformity across all your devices? Meaning, if I'm watching on a big screen, it will be the same ad load as on the iPad, the same ad load as on for that 72-hour window?
The answer is I don't believe it has to be the same commercial ad load. So in other words, there are a lot of our colleagues that are out there looking at same commercial load as what they see on TV, but on digital platforms. Both our ad sales team and we also don't believe that we need to do that in order to extract the value out of the sort of online digital platforms. And we're not quite sure what it will really get us at the end of the day. With that effort, we're already making what we want to make at this point, at this specific time. And on top of that, when you start looking at the opportunities of what the online platforms can do, it's like, why replicate what you're getting on TV? I mean, we have a better opportunity of doubling the ad load, which is still much lower than what you see on TV, improve the CPMs, they're great CPMs for us, take advantage of the digital platform. We still haven't done that yet, which frustrates me, is that as advertisers, we need to get better at that. But we don't see a need to do the same thing that we've done before.
Do you think that's an ABC thing, or do you think that's universal?
In terms of, well, I think there's two different camps, right? So, I mean, in terms of
Well, I mean,
ad
you
loads
say you
or-
don't need to do it. Do you think that's specific to ABC? Like, you have great content, able to be monetized, or do you think sort of anybody can do it if they wanted to do it?
I think it's specific to us. I can only speak to how we look at it. Everyone's going to look at it differently. So, like TNT and TBS, they're doing the C3 route. So, I mean, they all have their own reasons for it. So, I can't really say it's only us. I'm sure there are other people who may feel just the same way we do, but there are also people who are equally sort of on the other side looking at us going, they're idiots, right? So I think everyone has their own agenda. We have our own sort of way of looking at it, and ultimately the market will shake out, and we'll figure out what's the right path.
And let me ask one follow-up question as well, which is you just expressed some frustration about not being able to fully exploit the kind of online video advertising medium. What are some of the key things that you think are still there to be had to kind of increase the returns?
Yeah, well, I think we basically put out there the interactive ad model when we first started streaming online with ABC.com almost 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And the whole point of it was really take advantage of what the interactivity can do with your ad. And there were some advertisers who were very progressive, and they really created ad units that were interactive. They were flash-based, you could click through, you could play games, and all our research said that the returns are extraordinarily high. The metrics were great. Yeah. Brand affinity, brand awareness, all those things were, skyrocketed through the roof. But over time, we saw a big chunk as more and more people started buying on the full episode player. More and more people just sort of threw the 30-second ad up, and it was really tough. He said, "Look, we've created a a container for you to do whatever you want. We weren't even measuring what they were doing. They could have created, sort of click-throughs, great, all this stuff that we had no idea the amount of value we were creating, and yet they still didn't take advantage of that.
Don't take their business, Albert.
So it's tough because I think you have a lot of the agencies are very sort of progressive in their thinking in terms of we want to get there, but then when you get down to the execution, it's more of the same stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Follow up real quick.
Yeah.
The new model is 2 ads per break, normal TV interstitials, as opposed to ABC where the container's still there.
Right.
How do you re-engage all that engagement stuff on the new ad format that you're using over on the iPad?
Well, I think those are all technical constraints, right? So ideally we'd like to take the same concepts of interactivity and then migrate them to all platforms, but we're sort of limited. Part of, as you all know, on the iPad there's no flash, so there are a lot of technical limitations for us to be able to start putting sort of interactivity around it. So there are ways to do it, actually, that we're looking at and trying to figure out what's the best way to take the same concepts and interactivity and then develop it into the app so that we can provide advertisers interactive options, but they're probably not the same as giving someone an open flash container and doing whatever they want. It's going to be somewhere in between.
These magazine apps are going to be an interesting proxy for that. I mean, on my flight yesterday to New York, I bought Wired and Vanity Fair on the iPad,
Yep.
and the interactive advertising is phenomenal.
Cool.
I spent as much time in the ads as I spent in the magazine.
Yeah.
And and it's done that 3/4 of the people didn't do anything but put their print ad on it.
Yeah. The one thing that I wish that Wired did was I wish they didn't put all their stuff in that app. I don't know how long it took. It takes forever to download.
Yeah.
It should be on demand when you
It
get
should be on
to it,
demand
yeah.
from the cloud. Going
Yeah.
back to sort of what we think content is going to be, I fully believe all the assets, all the content, feeds, text, photos, video should be in the cloud, and the app essentially is just the wrapper. That's
With the local cache.
Then you
right,
gotta
the
pay
local
for
cache. It just
But then you got to
pulls.
pay for the Wi-Fi on the plane to read the magazine.
That's true. That is true.
Okay, more questions. Here.
Hi, I'm a content creator, and I just wanted to agree with Gannon for you, Ted, that I think Netflix is like the perfect execution of a universal experience across multiple platforms. So I think you guys rocked it. So congratulations.
Thank you.
My
commission.
question is, so being on those multiple platforms, are you able to monitor what the most sustainable, loyal viewership is? So like, how are people consuming on PC versus console versus
We are a data
Blu-ray
universe.
players? And what are you noticing? Where's the highest amount of viewership and return coming
We
from? 'Cause
don't
I think
talk publicly about most of that. We do monitor every bit of it across all devices, across all classes of content. But I will tell you what's interesting, when you talk about the excitement around mobile, the one thing that is consistent that I can share with you is that the bigger the screen, the more the viewing hours. So people are, so the devices that are hooked to TVs, people are watching, are engaged, much more engaged in than they would be in a mobile formats or smaller formats. So.
And is iPad somewhere between mobile and television?
Somewhere, yeah. Early on, it's early to tell, but it's,
Right.
you see in how many times the app's been downloaded that it's very popular.
Question over here.
Hi, I'm Sean Holzman. This is for Albert and Justin, and maybe the rest of the panel as well. But Albert, you talked a little bit about how .com and viewing is producing more revenue than DVRs. Do you see companies like Hulu, ABC, TV.com opening up to the connected TVs as opposed to blocking?
We'll get there. Is the secret on? Yeah.
Did we
We'll
lose
get
our
there
mics?
if, as Will talked about it actually today, in that once you get parity, once you get to the economics that's on a per episode basis, it gets pretty close. That you wouldn't really care where that episode is consumed. So yeah, I think, but everyone's in a different place of that revenue per episode. I mean, we're at a good place on ABC.com, so I think we'll think there'll be less barriers. For those that have not achieved that same level of revenue per episode, there will be probably more of a prohibition of getting to those platforms.
And one other thing you've done, Albert, is again used Windows, so you don't have to achieve economic parity online with on air because there's the 6-hour, 8-hour delay window. So
Yeah. I mean, I think exactly. So if we were going simulcast at the same time as broadcast, we'd have to get the economics the same as broadcast.
Yeah.
I think we've been challenged to figure out how we get there. It's either add more ads, which I'm not sure we want to get there. Then it's also increasing the interactivity.
Yeah.
And is there a different way of selling the advertising that actually brings a different model? And that's a whole other thing that, that's really tough to do, because TV buyers will buy the same way. So when you talk about click-throughs or, other ways of, buying advertising, it's very foreign to TV buyers versus those who are buying pure digital plays. So if you try to blend the two, which would be great, but we haven't gotten to that world where people are blending the two.
Great. Other questions? Sorry, Bob. Yep. Wait a minute.
Bob Green. First of all, this first conference I've been to, we haven't heard the word Hulu, which should tell you something about the future of Hulu.
There's someone from Hulu here. Pete is here. We'll hear Hulu.
But it's interesting, no one's mentioned it. To me, the question I have about Nielsen numbers and all that, because I agree with you, Will, television viewing goes up. But is television viewing going up as a result of the fact that there's more content online in which to view it and therefore catch up, engage, re-engage,
Totally.
and then therefore I watch it? And so should that be the model that every broadcaster, every cable company looks at doing? I had to get someone sitting in front of me saying, I watch Netflix and I watch Spartacus. Well, the people at Starz love to hear that, because that means there's value to Starz. Same thing with ABC and Warner and everybody else. So my question is, shouldn't the industry be exploiting online more to drive the mothership, if you will, of the core business? And why isn't that happening?
I'll take one if you don't mind with,
Yeah,
with your stuff. But
actually, that's exactly what we're doing, which is we look, our strategy is television is still the mothership. Sort of like the graphic I always use is TV is the center of our universe. It's our business. And all these digital platforms, whether it be PC, mobile, even cable set-top box, really serve to enhance the overall television business. And we have to look at each of these digital platforms as serving a specific need of why consumers aren't watching us. And so we've been very deliberate about when we put our shows, where, how much, what we offer, how long we offer it. And in many ways, it's strange when we thought about how much content we leave online. In terms of 4 weeks, that kind of became the de facto standard. It was just funny when we just sort of said, okay, that's probably the right time, and then next thing you know, all the legal agreements and the guild agreements all started to fall in line that way. But it is a model that is driving and supporting the overall TV ecosystem. Yeah, and we would be supportive of people putting more stuff, because at the end of the day, it's about consumer engagement. It's about a piece of or a story or characters that the creative community creates. And you have to give the consumer every opportunity to figure out how they're going to be able to access it, because it feeds the overall system. So how long you do it for, that's up to debate, and how you monetize it. But you really should be looking at all these things serving the mothership. And when you look at our strategy, we went first on ABC.com. And at that time, that was exactly why we did it, because we knew we weren't going to open the floodgates. Not everyone comes to our site. We knew that the people who really loved our shows do come to our site, and so for us to start there and manage the distribution, the economics, understand how we're going to make money, and then once we were comfortable with what the business model was, then we thought, okay, once we've learned that, how do we expand that distribution? And then came the Hulu deal and the YouTube deal, actually, both those deals. And we were very deliberate about, okay, with Hulu, we're going to do this, but we're going to do it the way we want to do it, which is branding, strong branding, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I think it's helped overall.
By the way, following up on Bob's question, something else we haven't talked about yet on this panel is the role of YouTube, and you just mentioned it. Here we are an hour in, and we haven't mentioned YouTube. Just a quick kind of among the panelists, the importance of YouTube in one very narrow context, which is kind of picking up on Gannon's point. As Google TV gets out there and YouTube becomes, in my opinion, kind of the flagship of what Google TV is, how important does YouTube become how more important, I should say, does YouTube become in this ecosystem?
I think they are going to be as important as the user experience that they can deliver. So if they can deliver sort of the personalized niche, search, discovery, filtering, whatever it might be, today, if you use YouTube and you're trying to find premium, let's say, branded, episodic content, it's pretty difficult, and it's really mixed in, and you're not sure what's legal and what's not, and I'm actually getting the real version that the studio maybe put on here, or am I getting something that somebody else put on here? And YouTube, I think, is struggling to keep up and figure out what those models are. So I think it's going to play a huge role if they figure out how to drive the search and discovery and kind of user experience and the data behind that. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to do anything different than what it does today.
Okay.
To expand on it, my feeling is that Google's going to be a huge force in driving an ecosystem that cuts across multiple platforms in a fairly efficient manner. As it relates to YouTube, I think, in my mind at least, it's an open question from a kind of consumer perception perspective. Does YouTube stand for premium content? Can it extend its brand permission to include that? And I think the jury's definitely out on whether that'll be successful or not.
It's a very difficult transition for sure.
It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with these comments. We're seeing with even branding agencies who are doing video-based initiatives who've traditionally used YouTube. Let's do a viral video, get it on YouTube, it'll go viral. Are now much more interested in creating high-quality, webisodic content in a fully branded environment that they control. And what they're discovering is it's these other social mechanisms which are enabling the discovery that YouTube used to be all about. So, for instance, if they do a great webisodic content, someone shares it on Twitter and Facebook, that's going to drive traffic back to their fully branded environment as opposed to getting mixed in with all this user-generated stuff in the YouTube environment. I think the jury's out as well whether YouTube will even be that central to Google TV. I mean, you would think it has to be, but at the same time, Google has to fit in with a premium business model. This is cable TV with cool internet stuff around it. This is not front and center YouTube. Yes, it's going to have YouTube, but are most consumers going to spend the majority of those 4.5 hours on their couch flipping through YouTube? I don't think so. But I don't know what you think.
I mean, the three legs to the social media stool is Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I look at YouTube as a social media site for video, and it has been. That's how it started. Yeah. It's its heritage. It's where you're going to drive a lot of that buzz around a specific piece of content. I think you've seen YouTube struggle a little bit with premium content. It's hard because people don't see it as a place to watch premium content. I think if anything, users know to go to Hulu for premium content. They go to YouTube for short form.
The only exception is music videos.
With exception of music videos, right. But even that is social, too.
Right.
Everything's driven around sort of sharing this stuff.
Right, but nonetheless, I mean, there is quote-unquote premium content on YouTube when you search for it, illegal or legal. I mean, I had missed the USA-England World Cup game, but I wanted to see the botched goalie play. I went online and watched it, but if YouTube were available on my TV as easily as I could just do a search, it seems like that becomes it.
The difference is, though, with someone has taken the pain of recording it and putting it up. Yeah. So people understood, I go to YouTube because someone entrepreneurial or illegally has put it up. It's not like they don't expect ABC to put like the show there. It's all part of the social web. It's like I've missed something. Someone in the community has given me the opportunity to watch something I missed. So it's all driven by this community of YouTube users. So
but like to your point though, if it's some horrible gaffe, the first place you're going to go is YouTube to see if you can see it. But if it's last night's episode of Lost, you won't.
Yeah, yeah.
I think they can play a role in if they can sort of facilitate this automated swapping out of legal and illegal, which I know is one of the YouTube initiatives to say when someone does search for Lost or whatever it might be, Friends, another library or current show, if they could swap that out and redirect to Hulu, to the WB.com, to ABC.com, to CW, wherever it is, that's valuable because they may be able to solve sort of the navigation experience, but they're not going to solve the mentality of why you'd go there.
Yeah, I would say at the end of the day, though, a company that has the resources and the brain power to make something work, and to make, when I say something, I mean high CPM ad delivered content. I mean, it's hard to count them out completely.
Yeah, good. Any other questions in the audience? Yeah.
Just one quick question, though. I know we've been talking about Lost all night, and we've been talking about what a great show that was, and how it got the audience, and how they all came there. This is for Albert, but in today's environment, given what's been happening in broadcast television, given all the disruption and everything we've been talking about, do you think ABC would greenlight a pilot of Lost today?
Not Albert's department.
Not my department. I don't even know if whoever was involved even would have green-lighted it back then, but I don't know. I can't say if I think it was a huge gamble that the network did. It paid off. I mean, that pilot was delivered hours before it actually aired. No one saw it.
Just in time.
Yeah, just in time delivery. So it's tough. I think it's going to be really rare that we'll see a show like Lost again, which is really a bummer, at least for me at least. But you never know. If you have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, you never know. There might be that one show that will do again. So never say never, but those are really rare.
Do we have one last question in the audience? Back here, sir. Just behind you, Ken. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He already had the mic. Go ahead. I didn't see you hiding behind someone else.
Just had a quick question about discovery. Television has always been a platform that is a very consistent discovery mechanism for content, and in a world that's very siloed online, where you have a lot of different platforms, a lot of different devices, and a lot of different endpoints for consumption. How do you solve the discovery problem, and what does the future of content discovery look like in a completely digital ecosystem?
Ben?
It's exactly what VideoSchmooze is trying to do. Take huge amounts of metadata and make it simple for you to search and discover. I think it's one of the earlier comments where there is technology. It's not like teleporting or jetpacks. The technology exists, but the input device does not today. And so the input device is going to go a long way to bridging that gap, which everybody's saying is happening in the next 6 months. TiVo has their new Premiere box. They're shipping a new remote that looks sort of like a droid with a slide-out keyboard. Obviously, Google TV, Apple TV already has it, and you can use your iPhone and whatnot to control. So I think it's the input device that's going to drive a lot of that. But then there are very few companies sort of paying attention to that true personalization experience, Netflix being one of them, us being more of like the B2B side of it. But input, big one, and then what we said earlier, that the cable companies really paying attention and understanding the difference between navigating an IP world versus a closed coax world.
The one simpler way for me would be just the integration of the open internet into televisions in all different ways is what's going to overcome these issues. That's why I think how we invest in personalization and metadata initiatives to make sure you find those things. What Bob had mentioned about Spartacus, I had a couple of million people on Netflix who watched Spartacus who never heard of Stars, because they loved 300 and they knew that this thing called Spartacus existed.
Right.
And that's the hardest part. And the biggest struggle, I think, of the VOD space has been the only thing worse than a list of 100 movies for VOD is a list of 10,000 movies for VOD. And being able to overcome these challenges is where we think is going to distinguish the winners from the losers in this space.
QWERTY keyboard remotes.
Yeah, QWERTY keyboard remote.
Yeah, that's the one biggest barrier.
So if you need bigger remotes.
So you can search. So yeah, you can search. It's painful typing.
Right, I mean, I think that's a good point, though, but I think that it's not going to be search, which is the interesting thing, is that it's going to be personal, behavioral. So I watch 300, I'm going to like Spartacus. Here's Spartacus, you would like this. And then it's going to be social. What are your friends watching? What are your friends doing? There's way too much content out there now, and it's just getting more and more and more to be able to proactively go, let's see, Roman gladiator movies. It's not going to work like that, which I think is, and I think Google knows this, and it's doing a lot to kind of reinvent itself in the future.
I think people will do things, though, like I want to watch the Stanley Cup final. And I tried this the other day because it was a day ahead of time. I just needed to set my DVR, and I typed in hockey, and nothing came up on my Time Warner box. And I typed in Flyers. I'm from Philly originally. Nothing came up, and I thought, what is this under? How can I not find this? And so I typed in NHL, thinking that it surely wouldn't be under that, and that's what it was. It was NHL Stanley Cup Final. That was the title, and so that's how I found it. And so I think there are instances where you're looking for something specific, or maybe generic, like poker, and you want to see some World Series of Poker or something like that. You don't really know what's on. So it'll be both use cases, I think.
But if your cable operator knows that you watch hockey,
you better have hockey. I mean, that's inexcusable. Yeah. The data's there.
They just want to see how badly you want it to watch the
right.
game, how willing you are.
They charge you much more for the ads.
All right. I think we're going to leave it on that note. Let me just quickly thank again our sponsors, DigitalSmiths and Kite, Akamai, Horn Group, Erdetto, ScanScout, Signient. and all of course, our panelists today. Great conversation. Go Celtics. Thanks, everybody, for coming.